In the year of our Lord 1454, the village of Eldridge lay nestled in a valley surrounded by dark, imposing mountains. The scars of the past were still fresh in the villagers' minds, the memory of Lucian's reign of terror haunting them like a shadow. Although they had triumphed over the darkness, the victory felt fragile, as if it rested upon a delicate thread. The air crackled with an unease that mirrored the encroaching autumn, the nights growing longer and colder. Despite the bountiful harvest, something sinister began to stir. Livestock vanished under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind only scattered remnants and a lingering sense of dread. Crops that had thrived only days before withered overnight, as if an unseen force drained the very life from the earth. A dense fog rolled in from the mountains, thickening with each passing night and blotting out the sun. Whispers spread like wildfire among the villagers, tales of an ancient curse or a dark entity once again. Could it be, has Lucian returned? Alaric, now a leader among the townsfolk, felt the weight of responsibility pressing heavily upon his shoulders. He was no longer just a man who had battled darkness. He was a symbol of hope and resilience. Every night as he patrolled the woods with his silver dagger in hand, a gnawing fear gripped him. The darkness had a way of creeping into one's heart, and Alaric found himself wrestling with the shadows of doubt and memories that refused to fade. One particularly fog-laden evening, Alaric ventured deeper into the forest, drawn by a strange energy pulsing through the air. The trees loomed like sentinels, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky as if warning him to turn back. But he pressed on, driven by an instinct that something was terribly amiss. He stumbled upon a clearing, bathed in an otherworldly glow, the air thick with a palpable tension. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient stone altar covered in moss and entwined with vines. Alaric approached cautiously, feeling a shiver run down his spine. Symbols similar to those he had seen in the cave where he had faced Lucian were etched into the stone, markings of ancient blood magic. His heart raced as he realized he had uncovered something significant, something tied to the darkness that had plagued them. As he studied the altar, a chilling wind swept through the clearing, and shadows began to swirl around him. Alaric instinctively reached for his dagger, feeling a presence materialize behind him. Lucian stepped forward from the depths of the shadows, flanked by a group of vampires whose eyes glowed with an insatiable hunger. But behind Lucian, a far darker presence emerged. It was Valerius, the ancient vampire, the one who created Lucian and who commanded the dark arts of blood magic. His aura was suffocating, an overwhelming force that sent waves of terror rippling through Alaric. Valerius was known in whispered legends, a being of immense power learned from old dark gods who had long been forgotten. It was said that he could bend reality itself with the flick of his wrist, summoning shadows and weaving spells that could trap souls for eternity. The villagers had thought him a mere myth, a spectre of old tales meant to scare children into their beds at night. But here he was, manifesting before Alaric, with a purpose that promised chaos and destruction. As Valerius surveyed the clearing, his eyes locked onto Alaric, and a cruel smile spread across his lips. The ancient vampire sensed the fear and uncertainty radiating from the young leader, as if he was drawing strength from it. Lucian, rejuvenated by Valerius, stepped forward, bolstered by dark magic. He bore the twisted features of a man who had willingly surrendered to darkness, and he looked upon Alaric as one would a mere insect to be crushed. Without warning, Valerius unleashed a torrent of shadows, swirling and crashing toward Alaric like a storm. The oppressive darkness wrapped around him, suffocating and disorienting. Alaric fought back, raising his silver dagger, but the combined might of Lucian and Valerius overwhelmed him. They were beings forged in the fires of ancient magic, their strength far surpassing his own. As the darkness consumed him, Alaric felt his strength drain away, the power of the dagger slipping from his grasp. His vision blurred, and the last thing he saw was the malevolent smile on Lucian's face as the shadows enveloped him, plunging him into a void of despair. When Alaric regained consciousness, he found himself in the heart of Eldridge, his home now shrouded in chaos. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting an ominous twilight over the village. The sounds of panic and terror echoed in the distance. Screams and cries for help mingled with the laughter of dark figures stalking through the streets. Valerius and Lucian had descended upon the village, a whirlwind of darkness wreaking havoc upon the unprepared townsfolk. The once familiar streets were transformed into a nightmare where shadows danced with malevolence, and the air was thick with despair. The villagers, caught off guard, scrambled to defend themselves, but their efforts were in vain against the ancient vampires who reveled in their suffering. As Alaric struggled to rise, pain coursing through his body, he felt a surge of urgency. The village he had fought so hard to protect was crumbling under the weight of darkness. He pulled himself to his feet, each movement a reminder of the battle he had lost. The sounds of destruction spurred him forward, igniting a fire within him that refused to be extinguished. He stumbled toward the chaos, using every ounce of strength he could muster. The sight before him was devastating. Villagers cowering in fear, their homes ablaze, and shadows prowling like hungry wolves. Valerius and Lucian were orchestrating the mayhem with sadistic delight, their laughter echoing through the night. Alaric knew he could not confront them, not yet. He needed to regroup, to rally the villagers and find a way to fight back against the overwhelming darkness. He turned, racing toward the heart of Eldridge, where he knew the remaining townsfolk would gather in a desperate attempt to defend their home. As he ran, Alaric felt the ground tremble beneath him, the very earth resonating with the power of Valerius's dark magic. The shadows stretched and twisted, seeking to snatch him back into their grasp, but he pressed on, fueled by the love he held for his people and the memories of their shared struggle against despair. Reaching the village square, Alaric found a small group of villagers huddled together, fear etched across their faces. They were weary but resolute, standing shoulder to shoulder against the encroaching darkness. Alaric stepped forward, drawing on the remnants of his strength. He knew that despite their fear, they needed to believe in their power as a united front. He shared his plan, emphasizing the ancient symbols of protection he had learned. The villagers, hearts pounding but resolute, began to gather supplies. Candles, herbs, and remnants of the protective charms they had once crafted. As they worked, the air thrummed with determination, each flicker of light pushing back against the shadows. But as they fortified their defenses, Valerius and Lucian drew closer, relishing the fear that permeated the air. They stalked the village, shadows at their command, sowing chaos and destruction, feeding off the despair of the villagers. Alaric and his small group hurried to prepare, knowing they had little time left. Night deepened, and the chilling laughter of the vampires rang through the streets, sending waves of terror rippling through the villages. Valerius stood at the edge of the square, an imposing figure cloaked in darkness, while Lucian danced like a shadow among the ruins, reveling in the fear he inspired. Despite their fear, the villagers fought with a fierce determination, their hearts united against the ancient evil that threatened to consume them. Alaric led the charge, his silver dagger glinting in the moonlight as he cut through the shadows, each strike fueled by the love he held for his home. But the darkness was relentless. Valerius and Lucian pushed back against their defenses, weaving through the villages with predatory grace. Alaric felt the tide of battle shift, despair creeping back into his heart as he witnessed the toll the conflict was taking on his friends and neighbors. In that moment of doubt, he recalled the bond they shared, the strength that had brought them through the darkest nights. Drawing upon that connection, he rallied the villagers once more, reminding them of the power they held when united against the forces of evil. Together, they fought back with renewed vigor, their flickering lights illuminating the darkness, pushing back against the shadows that sought to engulf them. Alaric felt the energy of their collective resolve surge within him, empowering his every move. They would not succumb to fear. They would stand together until the very end. With a flick of his wrist, Valerius unleashed a wave of shadows that surged toward Alaric, threatening to engulf him in their suffocating embrace. Drawing on the strength and unity of his people, Alaric felt a flicker of courage igniting within him, a beacon of light in the oppressive darkness. He raised his silver dagger, the blade glinting in the dim light. He slashed away the wave of shadows and charged toward Lucian, intent on reenacting their first battle. But this time Lucian was quick, evading Alaric's strike with a fluidity that belied his monstrous nature. Shadows twisted and writhed, seeking to ensnare Alaric in their grasp. Yet he remained steadfast, focused on the connection to his village and the strength that coursed through him. He plunged the dagger into the ground, sending a shockwave of light radiating through the clearing, illuminating the darkness. The light burned fiercely, casting away the shadows that had encroached upon him. Lucian and Valerius recoiled, their expressions contorted with rage and disbelief. The energy of the villagers surged through Alaric, amplifying his power, pushing him forward. With a fierce cry, he plunged the dagger deeper into the earth, the light erupting into an even larger, brilliant explosion. As the brilliance enveloped them, Lucian and Valerius howled in anguish. The light burned hotter, incinerating the dark figures until they dissolved into nothingness. The last echoes of their cries, vowing to return, faded into the wind. In the aftermath, as dawn broke over Eldridge, Alaric fell to his knees, breathless but victorious. The villagers, having witnessed the harrowing encounter, gathered around Alaric, their faces a mixture of relief and fear. They had finally defeated Lucian and the dreaded Valerius. As the days turned into weeks, Alaric worked alongside the villagers, teaching them about the ancient symbols and protective charms he had learned during his encounter with the dark forces. They built barriers of light around the village, crafting talismans infused with hope and love. Together they transformed their fear into resilience, standing watch beneath the stars, refusing to let the darkness reclaim what they had fought so hard to protect. Although he did not know when, nor how, Alaric believed, to his very core, the vows of the Dark Princes. They would one day return.